Today I have two very important guests here, and I welcome and I'm very honored to have with me Heini Zachariasen, the founder and board member at Vivino, the one who innovated very much. I think that the biggest innovators in digital wine retail in the world, and Paul Mabray, CEO at Emmentry. And Paul Mabray has a great story, but he will tell us, about what would be the strategies and studying the numbers, especially in this moment, is very important to elaborate the new strategies, because we have to face a strange situation. I think you were both connected, guys, and you heard what we were saying with Mr. Guedes. We have to face something strange. We don't know what should we expect for the next months, and I think that it's very important to share our experiences about this. Heini, how do you see the situation? You have an outlook of many markets in the world with Vivino, and the behavior of consumers right now. How are they behaving? Because there are very different situations, even in Europe, comparing different countries. The behavior is different, even because the situation for the emergency, for the COVID emergency is very different from each country.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm sorry that I'm not with you guys in Milano. I would much rather be there with you. Maybe we'll see you next year for that. Obviously, what we see now is, what happened since March with the virus is that people were pushed to find new ways to buy wine. And personally, I think what we really saw is a tipping point for e-commerce. I think that people were pushed to, hey, we have to find a new way. We're not going to do retail like we used to. So now we're going to have to try e-commerce maybe for the first time. And we've been working in this space for some time and trying to convince people to start buying online. And suddenly there was a massive boost on that. So the question now is really, okay, they came to e-commerce. Will they stay there? And for us, now it looks like people are really, we have more people coming, and the people that come are staying. I think that's the big thing for us, that e-commerce, people have been pushed over, but they're really staying there. That was maybe a surprise for us that so many would stay. So we're seeing crazy numbers right now.
What Heini and Paul have in common is they both trust so much on data. And both of them are running businesses that are based on data. And what is right now, Paul, the future of wine online, in your opinion? Because we are facing a situation in which in some countries, especially, a big part of the sales will be online for the next months. We don't know if even in Italy, in the next month, we will have still the restaurants opened, even if we are trying, to work because another lockdown would be a total tragedy for our economy. But what is the future of wine online?
Paul, go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me here as well, and with my good friend Heini, and I see you got a nice new haircut, so good to have me. It's very interesting to echo Heini a bit. Wine online has kind of been the last category in the world that hasn't been affected by the internet. It's been dragging along and waiting, and there are no real great silver linings to this terrible pandemic that we have around the world. But if we want to take one positive attribute, is the entire world has woken up to online. In Italy, buying wine online, in America, and that trend is not just with the wine, it's across every category. I foresee us now kind of unlocking ourselves, meaning that wineries are gaining better skill sets and muscle memory to do a better job. Even Heine's company with Vivino, with the surge of amount of customers, they're learning to build better processes and investing in ways to retain and grow that customer footprint. I think that that's a trend we're going to see a lot of innovation that we haven't seen in the last 2 decades. And how to sell wine, how to deliver wine, how to expose wine that you can go pick up at the store that single day. The internet just doesn't consist of buying wine, by the way. It also consists of helping you find wine, helping you understand wine when you're sitting in front of a wine row or wine menu. So this whole digital intersection with our category is unprecedented in history. And I think we're going to see, first of all, we're going to go through a lot of growing pains because we're behind the times. So a lot of wineries and a lot of retailers are struggling to build up people, processes, and infrastructure. But as soon as that stabilizes, it's going to be the golden era of wine online, wine digital.
Yeah, I just want to agree with it. I think there's another important point here is that it's not like we think that the people that don't buy online, they're making a wrong decision or anything like that. The real big change here is that for the people that still buy offline, which is most of them, they feel better about that, right? They think it's better to buy offline. But the real shift here is that it's going to be easier to buy online because you have more data, you have more ratings, you have more reviews. And the same thing happened with books 15 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. We used to go to the bookstore. At some point we decided, it's going to be better to go to an online store, maybe Amazon, to buy this because it's just better supply, better price, recommendations, reviews, all those things. And that's where the shift is going to come. You're obviously asking 2 data guys about this, and you're going to get a data answer. So I think data is going to drive a lot of this.
Yeah, and to Tiny's point, look, most transactions, even still with books, occur offline in these capacities. But, the category is growing. In fact, book sales are better than they ever have been as a result of online being a better tool to educate the consumer. So why we talk about data and online, this is really that synergy that's been missing as our category has been abandoning digital tools and online for a very long time. And, Heine and myself have been really kind of, charging forward at the front of the line. But, for us, we see what we seen 2 decades ago happening around us. And that's good news for the category, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Paul, how wineries and wine business professionals can improve their understanding of digital tools and channels, and they can build up the skills to collect and leverage data in the current digital and physical environment? So we need to help them some way, especially in this very, very difficult age in which they have to face something which is sometimes, in many times, out of their regularity of their normal days. They have to learn something, and how can we help them?
So I think that this is a very hard problem that you're asking, and it has 2 kind of key issues to it. The first one is the irony of the situation, which is most of the people that run wineries or work in wineries use digital in their daily life, right? We have a smartphone, we go to Google, we buy on Amazon, we use social media. Those are kind of the 4 pillars. Infusing that as a cultural part of our business has to start at the top. That means the boss has to start thinking these are important. They're not projects, they're not ancillary parts of the business. They should be DNA that we're thinking about our business going forward. The problem with that is we're not starting from 0 as wineries. We're starting from -10 and -20 because we haven't been investing in it, and the world's went ahead of us. So we're going to have to catch up. We're going to have to pay down that debt, and unfortunately, that just requires investment and time. But like everything, and I think that this is fundamental, we can't crawl and then run. It's the old story is how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. The key to it is we have to start taking bites against this and start working towards this goal of building infrastructure, hiring better people, thinking about digital first as part of every single project we do, whether that's how we talk to retailers and restaurants, how we market to consumers, how we collect data. That has to be digital first, has to be part of that DNA. If we think of it as an afterthought, we're going to keep putting it at the end of the line, and we're never going to catch up with the rest of the world.
Yeah. And that's really the core of it there, Paul, is that the first thing you need to do is make a decision that online, maybe e-commerce, is a big part of your business. And I think, honestly, pre-COVID, a lot of people said, it's fine, online is small. But then the tipping point came, and a lot of people have seen, we have to be a part of this. We have to have an online strategy. And let me just give you an example of that. we have a lot of suppliers joining our platform to sell on Vivino. And right now, we're getting 10 inbounds for every partner we can put on the platform. So we're adding one partner a day, and we're getting 10 inbounds. So now they've seen it, and now there's a massive amount of supply and people that want to sell on the platform.
Okay. Heini, so what is the future of Vivino? It's a question that I always wanted to ask you because, I'm a big fan of what you did. And right now, especially in a strange age as the current, what is the future of Vivino? And maybe you can give us some spoilers about the news.
Definitely.
What you're working on, because it's really interesting for us.
Yeah, I think if we think really long term, let me start all the way out in the future. So what we really want to be is we want to be part of every decision you make about wine. Yeah. It means it doesn't matter where you buy it. You don't have to buy it through Vivino. If you buy it in a supermarket, wherever that is, you think Vivino. I want to see Vivino rating every single time. So we're going to build, or we are building, the best data set for wine anywhere in the world. We're going to know everything about a wine. And again, thinking far in the future, we are seen as an app company right now. And app is the big driver of what we do. But long term, we want to be on any platform, right? Is that going to be built into the phone? Is it going to be a part of some glasses, whatever? We want to be on any platform because we're going to be the wine data company that drives those decisions. So that's far in the future. It's really important for us. And the next thing, which I think is very close now, actually something we worked on for a long time, is really to improve personalization. We've learned so much about wine, and you've seen on our wine pages in the app now, we have a very specific taste on all the wines, all those things that we've learned from the community. And all that has sort of a bigger goal, and that's to create better personalization. We want to be able to know everything about the wine, know everything about the wine drinkers, and put those things together. And you see that a little bit in the app, but one of the big things that's going to come very, very soon is that the wine page is going to change in the app. So you not only have a rating, but you also have a personal score. So we're going to say, hey, we know that Paul hates Zinfandel. So every time he sees a Zinfandel, it's going to get a lower rating. So it's going to say like a match for you. How does this wine match with you? And it's something we're incredibly excited about, just as people use it, but also when people are going to pick the right wine for themselves.
Paul and Heini, is a question for you both, guys. Of course, the market is changing, and the online market is increasing lots. It's changing the market mix totally. Of course, we can consider the months of pandemic, of lockdown, because of course, those data are really, really difficult to interpret in a normal situation. But what do you think that we will have in the future from these months, that will be left from these months in the numbers of the online sales?
Well, I think you're going to continue to see a growth in online sales. It's been growing with every other category over time. I mean, to be really honest with you, whether you look at books or groceries, that's a trend that's happening. It's been accelerated by COVID. The current stats say that the internet in every category has been pushed ahead by 10 years. That's kind of the standard. In wine, that's probably about 30 or 40 years we've been pushed ahead because we've been so far behind.
We were also negative 20 before, so.
Yeah, exactly. So that's plus 60, I think, in that piece. I do think that there's, all of the businesses adding e-business as a category is going to continue to increase, whether it's a winery having a direct-to-consumer page, whether it's a retailer having a more robust e-commerce experience. But let's not forget, there's a lot of large entities that are coming to the space too. I mean, Amazon has been dancing around wine for a long time. In the United States, they're just waiting for some court cases to happen. But our industry has never seen an Amazon like we're going to see that owns Whole Foods, that has the same day delivery. I mean, it's going to be an interesting collision with Vivino in some ways during that period of time. Because Vivino currently right now is the Amazon of wine as you look at it going forward. I think that we all got a taste in COVID of the possibility, the art of the possible. We all have added resources to capitalize on these COVID moments. We're not going to fire these people at the end of COVID, which is not going to end anytime soon. What we're going to do is keep using these resources to grow that channel.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. It just feels like people sometimes need to be pushed to create a new habit, but once they've started that habit, they stay there. So it's really, really hard to change habits. But once you're locked inside your house, and this is the only way to do it, you figure out this is easy, and then you keep going. And I want to say one thing about, sometimes people forget this, but you could think that shipping wine is cumbersome. It is glass bottles with fluids inside, they do break. But the convenience of buying wine online rather than going to a supermarket, it's amazing, right? Instead of dragging around 12 bottles of wine, it lands right at your doorstep. So people, once they start seeing that, they're like, yeah, I'm never going down to a supermarket to buy a bottle of wine again.
Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle, and I think what we'll see is the continued build, and the infrastructure that's going on around delivery is continuing to get more robust, whether that's through grocery delivery or wine. And all of that infrastructure, by the way, while it may seem nascent or small or not working quite right, becomes the foundation of faster, easier, more force. In fact, right now we have Amazon building a distributed warehouse right here in Napa and Sonoma, so that they can have faster delivery to us. So interesting phenomenons.
Not to mention cost, really. I know wine is always going to be heavy and so on, but as we reach more and more scale and so on, the cost of shipping is just going to keep going down. And it's a big part of what's holding back now is shipping costs. And as they go down too, then things are going to get accelerated even more.
I think in the United States, it's shipping and retailer restrictions. Wineries don't have the same restrictions, but that's been one of the, I often say that regulations haven't slowed down wine sales online for wineries, but they have slowed it down for people like Heine and retailers. It's been a cumbersome cobweb. And as soon as those restrictions go down, that's when you're going to really see all this infrastructure that Heine and those teams and all the other retailers like Zaki and Total have been building up, unlock for them to be able to ship wines. And the market will look very different in the United States when those retailer restrictions go down and when Amazon launches. It's going to be a whole different dynamic.
For sure.
Yeah.
And let's go back to where we are originally, so to Italy. And what is, Paul and Heine, the future of Italian wine in the States? We have a great opportunity right now, actually, because we have, we have low taxes for the import and lower than the French, especially, that are, of course, our first competitor for the import. How do you see the future of Italian wine, and what would you suggest to the Italian winemakers to work better, especially in the States?
You start, Heine, on this one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Paul, you go for it on that one. I think that's not necessarily an easy thing to answer. But I will say that, Italian wine is doing really, really well in the US. We looked at price points recently on Italian wines. On our platform, average Italian wine is at like $28, relatively high, and also one of the highest in the world when it comes to Italian wine. So all around, we see Italian wines doing really, really well. I think one thing that I heard from somebody else, which is not really data, but something that the reason why people buy Brunello, the reason why people buy Barolo and so on, it's because those are brands in themselves. And some of the regions in Italy still don't have those overall brands. Like a place like Sicily, we see a lot of growth. I think people might have a difficult time understanding Sicilian wine. So doing those things, having people understand parts of Italian wine better, I think is going to help. But what we see for sure is that it's just European wine is, you get more value for money on European wine, and that is especially true for Italian wine. And Paul is sitting in Napa where prices are pretty high. So I think Italian wine can really compete, even if you have to cross the Atlantic to get to the US.
Paul?
Yeah, so I see the world very differently. Look, the world for international wines in the United States has never been better in some ways. It's more complicated ever. It's the #1 market in the world. It's the most competitive market in the world next to the UK. Look, the internet has no boundaries or barriers. So your ability to invest in helping consumers access information and use the internet to make buying decisions is fundamental for them to translate languages and geographies. I think that that's a part that an investment in making it easier for information, that someone standing in front of a shelf, that someone searching for wine, trying to understand what a Barolo is, to be very fair with you. I know that we set, us in the wine industry understand what Barolo is, but a general consumer may not, and how to help them make that purchase decision, whether they're standing in front of a shelf or they're at a restaurant menu, because candidly, this is the window to the world right here in our pockets. And whether they're using Vivino or Google or a myriad of other apps, the reality of it is that's where they're going to look for information. They have the Library of Alexandria in their pocket, and that's where the investment from Italian wineries could be to transcend and boost sales in market. I think the second piece is we live in a time and an era where we have unprecedented information about markets. We have unprecedented, and using data to make decisions versus just guessing or licking our finger and saying, I want to go to the United States, I'm picking to go to Idaho today. There's so much data from social media, from applications, from even account sold data at wholesalers that we can use to inform smarter decisions. Data drives the future and helps us be smarter about how we target markets.
Yeah, and the young generation is really willing to use that. So if we look at something like Napa Cap, I don't want to go after Napa too much here with Paul in the room, but
easy. We had fires. Come on, give us a break here. Slow down. We need to buy Napa wine too.
It's a fantastic brand, right? So people buy Napa Cap because it's fantastic and are willing to pay more for it, right? And so the younger generation is also willing to explore more because they have these tools, right? So they have tools like Vivino. They will use Yelp or somebody else for a restaurant. So they're willing to experiment with these things because they have better data. I think also that creates an opportunity for winemakers in Italy that they've never heard about, even from a region they've never heard about. If this is a 4.2 on Vivino, I'm going to try it. I have that trust. And in the old economy, they would buy a Napa Cap because, hey, this is an amazing brand. I love Napa Cap. Can't go wrong. Willing to pay for that.
I think what Heine's trying to say is the umbrella of the region is important, and that's what we use to market, but we can get down, because of the access to data, we can get down to the product-specific information to help create conversion. And that's a unique place to be, because we're so used to marketing regions, we're so used to marketing variety, we're so used to marketing DOCs. The reality is the products are just as important today, and finding out about what is it, one of 250 products are sitting on the shelf so that can make a smart decision is fundamental.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to speak for you, Heine, but I want
Thank you for translating, Paul.
Yeah, good job.
So, guys, that we are in the Wine Generation Forum, and it's a forum that was born to connect the new generation of people working in the wine industry. And the most interesting thing of the last years is that we have so many new kind of professionals working in the wine industry, in the marketing side, in communication, in innovation, in technology, in commerce, in everything. I think that the growth of everything that surrounds the wine production is the most important thing for the growth of the general impact, of the wine industry. And we would love to create a kind of a laboratory in Milan in which to grow people that want to do jobs like the one who did Heine and like the one who Paul Mabray does every day, which is really important. So I'd love you to give some parts of your ideas, experiences to this generation of people, not just today, but even in the future, because I think that, of course, they had big masters in their cellars, in production, in the vineyards, but are just a few people who can give them something very important for the future in the other sides, of the business, in marketing, in communication, in technology. Okay, so it would be very important. How do you see the growth of everything surrounding, which is surrounding the wine production? Because, in my opinion, in our opinion, is the key point.
Heini, we want to lead on this one?
No, go ahead. You're in the wine production region here. You go ahead.
So, look, I think that our focus on production, we do a great job. We have this skill set mastered of making great wine. We don't want to argue who makes better great wine. Every winemaker makes an amazing product depending on the customer. I think what we really need to look to is, to your point, this new millennium, this new generation is how do we infuse adaptation and innovation that is not production innovation, but sales and marketing innovation into our culture. We are anchored in the land. We are anchored in an annual product. That's an amazing part of our story. There's generations and traditions that are part of us, but while they also, elevate us, they hold us back from some things. And we are also very insular. We look inward and we follow what other wineries do. What we really need to do is look outside of wine. We need to break the paradigm. We need to take people that are sales and marketing professionals that have learned a couple years in wine and insert them into Facebook or Twitter, insert them into working for Apple or other brands like Allbirds Shoes or Hint Water, to really learn and then bring them back to the industry so that they have a foundation of wine, what we've learned. We've inserted them into a new thinking model that's actually really fast and accelerated, and then bring them back to wine so that they have that good bookmark of wine. But really, they need that infusion of outside thinking and outside skill sets that are really advanced and beyond what we're doing in the wine industry to accelerate our industry forward. And more of that again and again, wave after wave of employees, or bringing those companies internally to help us teach those new generation, whether it's CRM, using data to inform sales and marketing decisions, technology, on and on and on. That's what we need. We need to infuse outside in us.
Yeah. I might want to add something very different. I think obviously what Paul says is super smart as always, but I want to say something a little bit different. And it's when we're in a year like 2020 where this COVID-19 comes in and disrupts everything in our lives, people can get like, oh my God, how is anything going to work again? How is, it's just, it can get really negative. You look at the restaurants, maybe your favorite restaurant closed, and it's really horrible for a lot of people. That said, you have to remember that these are the times when real disruption happens. This is where you can start new companies and really, really change the world. And I just want to say that to everybody out there that, embrace the new things. This is a new reality. It's really, really an opportunity to build something different, and things move really fast in a time like 2020.
I mean, that brings to the point. It's that adaptation is your point, right? Whether it's innovation, look, the only constant in the world is change. Let me say that again. The only constant in the world is change. It's going to be different next year. It's going to be different. And how do we adapt to those changes? Because it's going to be perpetually changed. There's changes that are occurring that even Heini and I are not fully prepared for, which is things like the amount of voice coming into the wine industry that we don't know about, like voice-controlled Siri or Alexa or whatever that. How does that work for wine? And no one has that solved. No one has that figured out quite yet. But that's the fastest growing category in the world is voice-controlled tools. Yeah. How does that adapt to wine? We're not even into the digital age, much less the voice age. So we got a lot of catching up to do. But you can see that's the next change. And there's going to be a change after that and a change after that. We have to be ready to adapt.
Yeah.
Paul, you started in the, let's say, old environment of wine because you weren't working, let's say, in the digital and marketing and research side. When did you do the switch? When you started thinking that the job you're doing currently with your company was the future?
So I was fortunate enough to do the old school, I dragged a bag, I worked at a winery, did direct consumer, but I was always a digital guy. But back then it wasn't cool to be geek. Now geek is chic, as I like to tell my wife. So, it really kind of came out for, she married me, so I think she does. So very fortunate. We have 4 kids, so it worked out well. But yes, the real change for me where I was able to expose it was the whole world came out in the .com era, right? Technologists and everything. But prior to that, I was programming secretly. I was writing my own code. I was using digital tools. I knew that they were valuable and important. It just wasn't easy to implement them. I think we all intersected with wine when the internet first came out with all the .coms. All of us learned something new. All of us became part of that era, especially our age group. Both Heini and I are Gen Xers. So that was when the internet really came to life for everybody at our age group.
Heini, you have we created an empire, you know, in wine. When did you start? You know, because it's something interesting, you know, because if you were French, Italian, Chilean, you know, well, it would be more easy, you know, to understand how, you know, you would do something like this in the wine environment. But you don't come from these countries, you know, and it's incredible how the biggest innovator, of course, in the wine digital retail, and not just retail, of course, came from another country, another area of the world.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting, and I'm not sure I have good answers for that, but sometimes, and it happens quite often that this disruptor comes totally out from the outside, right? So I think that is one of the reasons that, like, nobody ever said how I should perceive wine because I didn't grow up with a lot of wine. And if you look at Denmark, where I really started drinking wine and so on, it's incredibly diverse, right? If you are in Bordeaux, you will drink Bordeaux wine. If you are in a specific, in Tuscany or something, you will drink mostly Tuscany. In a place like Copenhagen, you will find any wine in the world, and maybe it's even more confusing than anywhere else. I think that's kind of important. So I think, you know, sometimes you have to see it from someone outside. I remember when we raised one of our big rounds, I think that was in 2013 or something, and I saw on Twitter, and someone just said, how the heck is this company not French? And it started here randomly because, you know, I needed help picking the next wine, and that's it, I think. So, yeah, it's kind of strange.
Yeah, it's interesting. Heini and I are both kind of people that have grown up. We have both some shared components of our vision for wine online, and we have also very different visions for how we want to see it. And we came from kind of two different backgrounds, me as an insider and him as an outsider, and still we keep weaving together. So it's fascinating to see these both shared and different visions at the same time. And, you know, there's no surprise how we become friends because, you know, we find a lot in common, and we also find good creative discourse about how to see these visions out because they're both healthy ways to see the market.
Heini, what is the role of the Italian products on your growth? You had a great growth, of course, in 2019, in 2020. What is the role of the Italian products?
So if you look at we're not only talking about the U.S. market. I think in the European market, I think the Italian product is incredibly important. I don't know if it's especially in the north, but in Germany and Scandinavia and Benelux and UK, it has an incredibly strong position, and it's important how we look at wine. What we're trying to do is help people drink better wine. It's really quite simple, and very often an Italian winemaker can make you the best possible wine at the best possible value. That's what our entire premise is, that if somebody wants to spend €100 on a bottle of wine, we'll give you the best bottle. If somebody wants to spend €10, we'll give you the best bottle. And I think the Italian winemaker very often can deliver on that promise.
What are the trends, in your opinion, the trends for the future of retail? Especially, you know, we will do another experiment because we don't know, as I was saying at the beginning, guys, what's going to happen in the next months, you know. So the future will be online, but we can't live, of course, without restaurants, without bars. Not just because they are an important industry, especially the hospitality industry in our country, but everywhere is something important and strategic. But even because I think they are the places where you do even the culture of the product, you know, because you go there, you drink a bottle of wine, but you have someone, you know, giving you all the information, the advices that are really important. Okay, if someone uses the Vivino app, he can have some instruments, but as well, we have to do something, I think, for the next months, even for increasing the culture of the people, because I think this will be the real key point, even for the future of retail. Even the physical experience must be changed by a culture, and I think in a different way, because sometimes we want to spread the wine culture using just, the technical side. And I think there's a different way of improving the culture of people in wine. We did something during Milan Wine Week with 20 of the best Italian chefs. We paired them with 20 different wines from different Italian regions done by some of the main wine producers. And this had a great success because it was the possibility even for the people to see something that they can redo at home. So it's something important even to work on this culture. So how do you see the future of retail, both on digital and physical side, starting from this point, in an age that puts the consumer experience in the middle, the more and more and more the consumer is in the center?
Yeah, I think that,
Paul.
Go ahead, Paul.
It's really interesting. Retail's been changing around the world in general, around the experience, and how stores become maybe even just trial mastheads or kind of shelf stores where you buy online, but really putting the consumer experience at the center. I think we have to remember something about wine that's uniquely special. And this is not to take away from any digital tool, but the reality of it is wine is a magical product that helps us transcend language, culture, time, and place. I can taste Italy in a bottle from Napa, right? I can remember, I can think about, I can go back in time for an older vintage. But at the end of the day, wine is a physical product. It's a communal product, and trial is an important aspect of that. And you can't taste wine. I can't drink wine through my phone yet, as much as I would like to some days. The reality is, this is an important part of our ethos and our cultures, and how do we help do that? And important vehicles like restaurants are fundamental for us to do both that communal experience, that social product where I'm tasting wine with Heine another night. By the way, that's how he got into it. We had a bender. And he, I'm joking, but enjoying wine together and trying it and introducing new, flavors, profiles, regions, times, periods, producers, that's key to that. And we need to get back to that place on how we do that, because trial is a fundamental tool to create loyalty.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, the difference between wine and say like fashion, right? So if you are on Instagram feed and look at apparel, look at fashion, you're actually, when you see that fancy t-shirt, you're actually consuming it and enjoying it. Wine is different in that sense because even if you see a bottle of wine, you're not really sensing it. So I think we are going to see some new winemakers, everybody has to find new ways to communicate that. And something that we haven't done a lot of yet, but like virtual tastings are becoming popular. I could see that, you have a winemaker in Italy and somebody comes to the tasting room and 12 people taste the wine. Why doesn't that winemaker make a tasting where the wine is shipped to 100 people before and then the people drink at home and now we have 100 people tasting the wine? Those things are happening now, and all those things are just accelerating in speed. And I think we need to think a little bit out of the box to create that experience that you would get, at a winery or wherever.
Okay.
Yeah, to Heine's point, it's about trial. How are we helping them try the wine, drink the wine, consume it when they're not coming to our winery, coming to Italy? And that's the fundamentals, Federico, that you're saying is, I don't see us getting on planes anytime soon in a meaningful way. I mean, the internal state concept that we have here in Napa is, when do you feel comfortable getting in an elevator with 6 strangers? That's when the pandemic that's when normal will feel normal again. And I don't think that's anytime soon.
Guys, I would stay hours with you talking about the future of wine, but we will have many occasions digitally in the next months, but I hope really soon, anytime soon, maybe in Milano Wine Week 2021, to have you here with me in Milan and to share a moment and a glass of wine together. Thank you very much for your contribution. I consider this one of the highest moments of discussion because it was casual, it was available for everyone, and this is something very important, because sometimes when we talk about wine we take it too seriously, and sometimes we have to give big ideas as you did, and to share big experiences as yours, and we are honored for hosting you at Milano Wine Week, and see you the next year, but in this month on digitalwinefair.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Pleasure being on. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Heini, my friend.